to know, I want to go back to the moment that you were basically freed from duty on the crown, right? And you have established yourself, you are in demand, you are getting scripts, everything's going live, and you have decisions to make. I wanted to know what were the basis of those decisions back then, how you proceeded from there.
Yeah, it was we always knew that The Crown was only going to be 2 seasons, each, and we had no idea if anyone would even watch it, truly. And we were actually filming the second season when it came out, so we kind of braced ourselves and had no idea. And I remember Claire coming back with her Golden Globe, and that was when it's kind of hit the crew and we just like, oh, whoa, people, this is something that people are really responding to. So that was a wonderful feeling. And so, yeah, when The Crown finished, I'd been really changed by the experience of playing someone over kind of many hours and having a real proper arc, like on stage, it felt that really I got to go quite deep, especially in the second season. And it just felt so rewarding and fulfilling and empowering, actually. And I knew that at some point I'd be really ready to take my first lead in a movie. And when I read Pieces, I just knew that that was it. So they kind of felt linked in a way. But in the meantime, I'd spent a long time watching other people do it and learning and absorbing as much as possible from how other actors did it, and and taking my time and paying my dues, really, I guess.
Well, I guess for me, I saw three films this year. I saw Pieces of a Woman, which of course you won Best Actress in Venice for this. It's extraordinary, but you also got kudos in Venice for Mona Fastvold's The World to Come, and during TIFF, I noticed that you were. I went and watched Mr. Jones, which is a third movie. So what was the timeline on those three films?
Mr. Jones was years ago. I think maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. I don't. It's funny how movies have different times of their lives, don't they? Somehow. So that was
A
The World to
spy
Come, and
thriller.
a spy thriller. Yeah, and that one was the World to Come and Pieces. I filmed kind of pretty much back to back. In fact, there was a period when I went over to rehearse for Pieces to then come back to Romania to finish off the winter section of The World to Come. And we also had the same editor and the same hair and makeup designer. So, and the directors knew each other really, really well. So it felt like sister productions. Plus, they were both about two women grieving the loss of a child. So it felt eerily related. And I was very grateful to play Tally in The World to Come, who was, I loved playing her because she's the kind of person that just thinks so big. She thinks she's so expansive. She thinks completely outside of the room that she's in and beyond. And Martha in Pieces felt the experience was almost polar opposite. It was someone that had gone so inside of herself, like unreachably, to anybody else, and internalized everything. So it was almost like playing, yeah, the two sides of I don't know, not even two sides, just
Totally
completely
get it.
polar different.
Totally get it. So, in The World to Come, which is this pioneer romance, lesbian romance, your character owns it. She walks into a room and she's radiant and she's beautiful and she's strong. And the character that you're playing opposite, that's played by Catherine Waterston, is the one who's withdrawn. And it's just a magnetic, extraordinary love story. Can you compare the experience of shooting these two films in terms of the way that the directors handled the actors and the collaboration?
Yeah, they're both just so collaborative, as these kind of indie movies that don't have a lot of money often are, because you've only got 20 something days to shoot, and you know, every moment counts so much, and the world to come we were filming on film. So we actually had a limited amount of film, so we knew that we had to get what we needed to get with the actual physical film. But it was just we were in Transylvania, actually, in Romania, in a valley in the middle of nowhere, and there were only 4 actors in it. So it was a real family feeling, and it felt so remote anyway, because we were in the middle of nowhere, and the houses, Mona had insisted on really building the houses, which is such a brilliant thing to do, because it wasn't a studio. It felt so lived in a way, and so much of the movie is about distance, actually, and the kind of aching, cavernous space, you know, between people, and how difficult intimacy is, but particularly for women who don't. I was so struck actually by my own ignorance about that time, even that in the 1860s, really not that long ago, women didn't have a choice over anything that they did day to day, let alone who they loved. And I had that feeling the whole shoot. I felt like, oh my goodness, this is a really untold story of those women in those days, and I felt really proud to kind of be carrying it somehow. And Pieces had a similar feeling in a way. It felt so much for me about the women that I'd spent so much time with prior to shooting, who had lost babies at every stage of pregnancy and just after, and it kind of felt like their story. So both of them had a real feeling of responsibility, actually. And I haven't answered your question at all, but both directors were so collaborative, and it both of them felt like theatre in that way, in the sense of we're all here to tell a story and hope for the best, really, all together.
Well, speaking of theater, I mean, the opening 30 minutes of Pieces of a Woman is one of the most extraordinary things I've seen. It's a single take. It goes straight through, and you and the man who plays your husband, Shia LaBeouf, are experiencing a home birth, and it's a harrowing thing. And you had never given birth yourself, so it must have been talk about responsibility. You must have really had to figure out how to do that.
Take a deep breath and push. Push, baby. Push. Push. Take another breath and keep pushing. Come on. Come on. Come on. Push, Kaka.
Yeah, it was so scary because it's one of those things where doing an accent's always quite scary, because you go, oh my God, what if, you know, so many American people watch it and think that it sounds fake, or, you know, don't believe it. And then that brings them out of the movie. And with this, I thought, oh my goodness, so many women have given birth and so many men have watched women give birth. But I thought, if I don't get this right, then the movie falls apart and the viewer checks out, you know, because they go, well, I've been there, or I've done it. It didn't feel like that, didn't, you know. And I always had this feeling that it should be a bit like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, you know. Martha felt so internal and so inexpressive in her grief, or unable to express it because it's just so immense, that I thought if we don't experience that trauma with her, then you might lose her, you know, as a viewer. You might kind of be really alienated from her experience where she's already so inward. So that really scared me, and I started off watching a ton of documentaries, none of which showed me the full thing, and actually felt quite sanitized. I was quite surprised. It was really edited. And then I ended up writing to a lot of obstetricians, trying to find someone who would allow me to spend time with them. And one amazing woman did, Claire Mellon, her name is, and she allowed me to come into a London hospital in a labour ward. And miraculously, one incredible woman allowed me to watch her. And I sat there for 6 or 7 hours, just, I don't have the words for it. I was so changed by it, and I absorbed every moment, and I could never have acted it without her, honestly, because I just got to watch her and see how her body took over and her go on this journey that wasn't kind of even conscious, really. And I knew after that, I felt, okay, I feel as ready as I can be to attempt to do justice to every woman that has done it.
Forgive me for being a wonk here, but what were the logistics of executing that, just as a film, a piece of live filmmaking?
When we all kind of decided that, you know, going for one take would definitely be the best thing to do. Cornell really wanted to do it, and when I heard that, I thought, I think that's brilliant, because actually what I noticed in the documentaries is that the cutting up of things again didn't give you a real full experience. And for me, I felt that it's so hard in scenes when you're in the middle of some, you know, big thing, and it's you getting a flow, and then you break for lunch and everyone goes away, and then, you know, someone fiddles with your costume and you have something to eat, and then, you know, then you're a bit full, and then you come back and you try and do it again and it's just kind of gone. And I just thought, oh, at least this way that I almost don't have a choice. It's a bit like in a play, you get onto stage, you step out and you have to just do it. And, you know, come what may, and if something goes a bit funny, you can't really think about that because you have to be on to the next moment. And the idea of coming in after lunch break, having to pretend, you know, screaming midway through labor, I just thought, I just feel like people are going to feel it as being fake. So we'd made that decision, and then we kind of mapped out logistically, okay, so we're going to start in the kitchen, and then we'll head to the living room. And then I think it's a good idea if maybe she wants to get in hot water, because I'd done some birthing classes and stuff, so I knew that women wanted to be in water, and so we kind of thought that would be a nice moment in the bath, and then ending up in the bedroom. And the three of us kind of, as actors, really worked together as a team, just like doing a play. And Connell was guiding it all, and we had this amazing birth consultant called Ilana McAllister, who I'd found through sort of lots of research, and she joined us for a day of sort of working out the physicality of it. And then the morning was the very first day of shooting, and we knew we could probably get about 4 takes in per day. So we thought we had 2 days of the birth, so we could have 4 takes. And then actually on the second day we ended up doing 2, and Cornell's used the 4th take of the first day. Probably because we were all so tired, we were just I don't know,
knackered.
yeah, somehow. Sometimes that works, doesn't it? You stop overthinking.
Well, so the other question was, would you be afraid of having a child now, having done that?
You know what? A friend of mine asked me that this morning, and I said, I'm so excited. I'm more excited because I got to watch this woman go through this most profound moment of life. You know, it was like a miracle when her baby came out and she was with him, and it was a really difficult birth. And I saw she was just so powerful and brave. And I guess I got to have like a mini dress rehearsal for it, really. But I guess I saw her go through a surrender. You know, you can't think your way out of it. Your body takes over, and you don't have a choice. You know, it's happening, and I just saw this like really beautiful surrender. So I'm quite looking forward to that experience, actually. I'd probably do it and go, oh no, this is how you do it. Damn it.
I don't recommend the experience, but what happens is that you have, most of the time, you end up with a baby, which is a wonderful thing.
Exactly. And it was that moment, you know, it was that moment when she was suddenly with her baby son, and her colour just like, she looked like an angel. And it was just, I was crying, and, you know, some silly actress in the corner trying to keep out of her eyesight so I didn't distract her. But it was just, I think, you know, it made me want to be a midwife, actually.
Wow. Well, so part of what happens in the movie after this is that it's partly a marital drama, and then it's partly a mother-daughter story, and then it's partly a courtroom drama. There's a lot of things going on, and of course you and Ellen Burstyn are quite magical in this. She's been around a long time. She's done some remarkable work. Did you look into her past performances? Did you look her up and remind yourself before you worked with her?
I'm not trying to change your mind. I know I can't do that. I understand that you've made up your mind to give your baby for medical research. The only thing I'm asking of you is that when it's all over, that we get her back so we can bury her. That's all that's the right thing to do, honey.
Because you say it is.
Do you really want to put your little baby's body on a mass grave like an animal?
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's funny to you?
Yeah. So cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I was already such a big fan because I'd watched all her performances and always thought they're just so blazing, you know. She's like Jenna Rollins, you know, who's one of my favorites as well. In that kind of, I love how they're so like fierce, but so vulnerable, and they have such fragility always going on at the same time, you know. And they're kind of messy, which I love because humans are, and I feel like it's so important to represent really messy women on screen because we are, you know, and we're not, you know, movie versions of women, you know. That's why the birth felt so important to get right, because I didn't want it to be a film version of birth. I wanted it to be a real human experience of birth that so many people have so amazingly bravely done. And in terms of the I was thinking about actually this today, that it's interesting that the movie kind of chooses specific dates to look at and to examine, you know, over the course of 8 months. And it's those moments are all really difficult ones in Martha's journey. You know, you don't see her just, you know, the events that happen are kind of always difficult or uncomfortable, and it's hard. And in a way I thought, God, that really reflects the what the women had communicated to me really about the aftermath of something like that happening, and how brave it is to get through an experience like that and to find the pieces of you and try and put back your reality together that has like changed forever and has been completely shattered, you know. And how do you put yourself back together after loss of any kind, really?
And you had
I thought about that a lot.
and you would want your mother to be there for you.
Exactly.
And yet she's hell-bent on some kind of other course of action that you don't necessarily feel supported by.
Totally. And that's her way of grieving. And it was interesting, one of the women I spent a lot of time with said my mother was trying to organize all this stuff, and she had lots of people around to her house as a sort of memorial thing without speaking to me. And it was so interesting spending, you know, really hearing that, because I think everybody's experience of grief and their journey is so individual and so lonely sometimes. And whichever family member you are, or partner, or whoever's been affected by it, you know, you have your own journey to go on, and that's sometimes really and antithetical to someone else's. And I think I always felt like the movie in a way was a journey back to herself, Martha, and in a way back to healing things with her mother. Because at the end there is a kind of grace really that this child has given them both, and in allowing to heal. You know, at the end Martha sat with her sister and her mother, and she's holding her mother's hand, you know, something that was so fractured and hadn't been healed for a really long time. And that was the gift in a way.
So there is this one extraordinary scene with your mother, played by Ellen Burstyn, and how did you put it together? How did the two of you map that scene out so that it played out the way it did?
I'm not going to your fucking trial.
Why not, honey? She has to pay for her incompetence.
Is this about money?
No.
Is it about what people think?
It's about you. It's about you having to face this.
I am facing this. I am facing it! I am facing this!
Well, I don't think you are. We need some justice here.
No, you need. That is what you want. That is what you need. That is your way. That is not my way. That is what you need.
Yeah, well, it was changing. It was shifting a lot, that scene. And it just, as we were coming up to the shooting, because we tried to do it as chronologically as possible, as we were coming up to it, I just felt like Martha had held everything in for the whole, you know, for so long, and had been, completely unreachable to everybody in her life. And the pain being so great that at some point I knew she'd have to let it out. I knew that something that's been pushed down so much would have to come out. And I was sort of experiencing what she was experiencing through the film, you know, how hard it is to push something down and not be able to, not feel like you even have the ability to express it. And as we were coming up to the scene, I suddenly thought, I think that something has to happen here where her mother really has to be the one, because why does she snap at this moment? Why isn't it 3 days before? Or why doesn't she get provoked by something she sees in some way, or, you know, lets it out in a different way? Why is it this? And so whatever her mother says has to do that. And the two things that happened were, and we worked out all together as a group, was her mother saying what she really thought about essentially that Martha's failed, you know, because if you'd done it my way, you would, I mean, it's that line is just, yeah. And yeah, secondly, the pushing this, her narrative, pushing her way of coping with it, which is to go to the trial and to get compensation and to, you know, get us have a successful civil case, which Martha just doesn't want. And those two things in combination meant that as we were coming up to it, I thought, oh, I think something's going to be released here. I didn't know what it was, but as soon as we started the scene, something just happened and ended up screaming at Ellen Burstyn, which I didn't expect in life, to be honest. And I just, yeah, and it was just like a release. It was almost like I felt it like a pressure valve, you know, because you do with family members, the people closest to you. That's what happens, isn't it?
Of course it is. Absolutely. It felt right. So did you get to go to the Venice Film Festival?
I did.
And experience a real live premiere and kudos and everything else and the award. Just talk a little bit about that.
Oh, and it was so crazy because weeks before, you know, the numbers were all changing in Europe, and I just thought I almost stopped myself thinking about it. The fact that two little films that I had so much love in and meant so much to me and everybody that we'd done it with, and you know, it's hard enough at the best of times with indie films, but to kind of both be accepted at Venice in a really difficult time, I didn't really let myself imagine that it might happen. And honestly, being on the plane to Venice, I was still sort of like bracing myself. And the whole festival felt like that, and in the best way. You know, everyone was on face masks and it was really safe, and there was no incidences or cases or anything like that. And they outbudgeted it so well, but it was a miracle. And sitting down in the cinema for the first time in months, when we obviously none of us have been in cinemas, and just being with a group of people experiencing what we love was amazing. And I was in wonder at the whole thing and like absorbed every second. I remember a friend of mine saying, just like brain shot everything. And I did, you know, I can still remember everything like it just happened yesterday, because I just didn't take a second of it for granted. And so when the award happened, I was a bit speechless, really, because it's one of those things where a week ago no one had even seen the film, so it felt so unexpected. And I just remember standing there thinking, some of my favorite actors of all time have stood here, and it felt quite unbelievable, really. I felt like a 13-year-old that had just got asked out to a party or something. Do you know what I mean? It was like one of those monumental moments in life where you just go, oh my God, I'll never forget it.
Well, it's interesting because you've done these big budget studio movies too, you know, the Mission Impossibles and the Fast and Furious, and you felt right at home there as well. It's a whole different thing. It's a whole different way of acting. You have to land on a dime in a short amount of time. Are you done with that, or is there more to come?
I never would have thought I would be in action films, because I was so bad at sport at school. You know, I'm so not physical. I'm really uncoordinated. I'm really clumsy. So it wasn't like a natural fit. Plus, I'd spent most of my years on stage, so it just felt like such a different world. But I realize now, I think that on stage, you know, plays, I always feel like Arthur Miller and Shakespeare and Chekhov, you know, they're almost like different genres in themselves. you can't compare them. You can't compare the language. They operate in completely different realities, and they require completely different things, you know. So the world's all completely different. And I think there's a part of me that just thought, this is a completely different world that I've never been in, and could I even remotely pull it off? And what will I learn here? And I did learn a lot, and I learned that the physical nature of those movies are like dance, really. You have to be so precise, and you have to, you know, train really hard, which is something I'd never done, and that really pushed me in ways. And hadn't been on a set that big, you know, I'd never ever done that, and I got to watch lots of different people work, which was I always loved doing, you know, to learn those. So yeah, but I coming back to doing Pieces and World to Come was amazing, really, because it felt so familiar, you know. It really felt like doing a play in a small theatre, which is where I guess my sort of natural habitat is, really.
Is there another Mission Impossible coming with you in it?
There is. They're a few months into filming now. I did a little bit in London, and they've been in Italy and Norway.
We know that Tom Cruise has expressed his concerns about safety.
About safety. Yeah, my sister is actually, she's an AD, which I'm really proud of, because we worked together several times on the crew, and she started on Jurassic World in the summer, and they were the very first ones back. And it was actually amazing watching her go do it, because I was locked down at home, you know, and they were off kind of trying to find all these protocols and work out how to get this big thing, you know, going again. And they were the very first ones in our industry. And it did give me like a massive flicker of hope, actually, just going, oh my God, you know, if my sister can do it and work as part of the crew and everything's safe and it's going well, then I felt really, it gave me a lot of faith, because it was, for all cinemas to be down and our whole industry and everybody, you know, so much going on in the world, and it being so hard for so many people, and so many of my friends in theatre who lost their jobs. And it's just, it made me immensely grateful for any day on set or work, really.
Well, I look forward to that. Is there anything else that you have coming up that we should know about?
No, and I've been reading a ton of scripts and waiting for the right next thing. And I've been waiting for that feeling, you know, like with Pieces or World to Come, where you just go, I just know I have to do this, and it feels important. And I think we all feel that there's definitely a movement towards, I mean, I personally feel a responsibility to find female parts and stories that, as I said, you know, feel like the women that we should be seeing on screen. You know, there's so many stories that haven't been told before, and different things from female writers and female directors, and I definitely feel a responsibility in creating those. So that's my big intention, really.
Those can be hard to find. I'm sure you've been pushing a lot of things to the side of the reject pile.
Yeah, everything so far, because I just I sort of feel quite unequivocal in that, really, you know, that it's a bit of a duty in a sense, in like a, as I said, responsibility to find them, because those are the women that I want to see on screen. I want to watch women that I go like, oh, that's like my friend, or like my sister, or like me, and for men to do the same somehow. And I think it's really important to find all the shades of that, of being female.
Amen to that. Vanessa Kirby, thank you so much.
Thank you,
and
Anne.
keep up the good work.
Thank you.